the United States Army soldier. His nation abhors war, and yet he has not been allowed to lower his guard or relax his vigil for a quarter of a century. In the short span of 25 years, he fought and helped win the world's largest war. He has answered his country's call repeatedly in an age of incredibly complex challenges that defy the simple solutions of the past.
Воробьи на крышах чирикают, что самое интересное. Iban a aplastar en el campo de la opinión.
The United States Army soldier. The 1960s have brought him here to South Vietnam.
Okay, move out.
Here in Vietnam, he fights a war unlike past wars, a war alien to the direct, total military action of World War II, lacking the clear front lines of Korea, a war distinctly a product of its own complicated age, a war that probes new depths while simultaneously it remains within restricted dimensions. But the soldiers serving in Vietnam spend little time analyzing the war, for they are too busy fighting it. They are primarily concerned with the fact that their country faces a challenge. They recognize that it is their duty to help meet that challenge. They are supported by the army in which they serve, and that support has been underlined by excellence. Though proven army methods are valid in Vietnam, a continuing process of refinement has also been taking place. Innovations have been made, innovations molded from experience against a particular enemy in a particular war on a particular terrain. The Army has taken many forward steps to conduct operations more effectively in Southeast Asia and to give its soldiers the finest possible support. This war makes unique demands upon the military. But every challenge has also served to polish the Army's professional skills and increase its combat power. The Army worldwide is benefiting from lessons learned in Vietnam. For even as this conflict tests the steel, it sharpens the edge. You are looking at an instructor who knows the war in Vietnam from first-hand experience. He is a combat veteran. He knows the terrain, the enemy, the demands made upon the soldier who serves in Vietnam. His knowledge is of tremendous value, and the Army invests it wisely to prepare others for service in Vietnam. Combat veterans serving as instructors in Army schools and training centers are an integral part of the feedback approach used in all Vietnam-oriented training. It is training based on what is happening in Vietnam, built around a steady feedback of battlefield lessons learned, incorporating newly adopted tactical innovations. Training innovations are constantly being introduced. For instance, the fighting in Vietnam is often at very close range with no time for aimed fire. The individual soldier must be able to beat the enemy to the draw. To train soldiers to shoot faster and straighter, the quick kill technique, a system of fast, unaimed, instinct shooting, has been developed and integrated into basic rifle marksmanship courses at all Army training centers conducting basic combat training. Quick kill is based on a simple phenomenon. When you point your finger at an object in your line of sight, it will align itself on the point of focus of your eyes with no conscious effort on your part. In quick kill, the rifle becomes an extension of the pointed finger, much like the six-shooter of the old-time Western gunfighter. Training starts with BB guns without sights against aluminum discs thrown into the air. Trainees are amazed to find that within a few minutes they are scoring 8 out of 10 times. After progressing to smaller aerial targets, the student switches to ground targets. Next come larger targets at greater ranges using standard rifles. Soldiers scheduled for assignment to Vietnam receive additional training with the M16 rifle. Special training in preparation for service in Vietnam is not just for the new soldier. For senior combat arms NCOs who have served for extended periods of time in non-combat arms assignments, a 2-week refresher course was established in mid-1967 at Fort Riley, Kansas. It provides Vietnam-bound NCOs with refresher training in leadership, tactics, weapons, map reading, and other subjects important to their overseas assignments, and it is pointed to the specific requirements of the Vietnam War. The newly established Infantry NCO Candidate Course at Fort Benning, Georgia, is providing skilled junior leaders needed to maintain the 12-month tour in Vietnam and to achieve the objective of a minimum of 25 months between successive tours in that country. At this school, which is similar to Army officer candidate schools, outstanding graduates of infantry advanced individual training are given 12 weeks of additional intensive training. Similar courses have been established for armor, artillery, and certain combat support skills. The Army spares no effort to ensure that each man going to Vietnam receives the best and most up-to-date training possible. After arrival, he also receives approximately 10 days of intensive pre-combat training with his unit. This is followed by periodic refresher training throughout his stay in Vietnam. Here, in actual combat operations, our soldiers provide dramatic proof that Army training is meeting the demands of the war, that it is teaching the soldier what to expect, what to look for, what to do, and how to react. In addition to teaching him standard U.S. tactics and procedures, it is providing him with the specialized knowledge and skills needed in Vietnam. Two fundamental tasks face the soldier in Vietnam. His primary job is to engage the enemy, but he is also deeply involved in processes that are building a nation. To this second task, he brings his natural friendliness and his traditional willingness to help others. Both tasks have demanded originality of the soldier and of the Army that supports him. The first step in engaging the enemy is to find him, and in Vietnam this is usually not easy. Yet the speed and fluidity of combat operations demand rapid information about the enemy. Here is an area where innovations, both in techniques and hardware, are paying off. The enemy is being located quicker and with more accuracy, and the forces needing this information are receiving it faster. One such innovation being used operationally in Vietnam is the UH-1B, equipped with a chemical personnel detector, or people sniffer. It can detect a completely hidden enemy patrol or troop concentration by smelling body odors or effluents. Another intelligence device being operationally used in Vietnam is a transmitter which can monitor the movements of free-ranging dogs in hostile areas. Any unusual movement by the dog is transmitted back to its handler or to an aircraft overhead for quick evaluation and action. The new railroad ambush detector, now in service in Vietnam, precedes a train and senses any tampering with the tracks. Among the innovations which strip the enemy of the cover of darkness are the spotlight-equipped helicopters called Fireflies, which are exposing enemy night activities to gunships. The extensive use of helicopters and the dependence on heliborne operations has been one of the truly revolutionary developments of this war. During 1967, 2 new Army helicopters were introduced into Vietnam. The Huey Cobra is providing a greatly increased capability for armed escort of air-mobile columns and close-in direct fire support for ground forces. And the Army's new Cayuse is a far superior light observation helicopter. Today in Vietnam, another operational concept is coming of age: riverine warfare. In the Mekong Delta region since the early part of 1967, U.S. forces, equipped and trained to operate on rivers and canals, in conjunction with air mobile and overland forces, have been conducting operations which are distinctly different from normal amphibious warfare. To meet the requirements of the riverine afloat force, which currently consists of 1 brigade of the Army's 9th Division and the Navy's River Flotilla 1, a number of specialized naval ships have been developed. Barrack ships provide headquarters and housing for an infantry battalion each. Troops are moved to contact aboard smaller armored and armed transport ships, supported by heavily plated and armed 60-foot monitors, craft which somewhat resemble their forebearers of the Civil War. A variety of smaller craft complete the riverine fleet, including barge-mounted artillery which accompanies the infantry, providing close, continuous supporting fires from its waterborne platforms. In the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, coordinated waterborne, foot, mechanized, and heliborne forces supported by artillery, tactical air, and armed helicopters are enabling us to conduct operations in areas that have been traditional safe havens for the Viet Cong. Psychological operations are being accentuated in Vietnam to influence people to act in a manner favorable to Allied goals, to convince an enemy soldier to surrender, a Viet Cong sympathizer to rally to the cause of the Republic of Vietnam, a Vietnamese civilian to support his government. The number of Viet Cong and North Vietnamese soldiers and sympathizers who voluntarily come over to the government side has sharply increased. New and better equipment is being procured and used in support of the program of influencing the Vietnamese people to support their government. The Green Berets, soldiers of the U.S. Army Special Forces, have never been used with such dramatic results as have been recorded in Vietnam. In almost 100 locations throughout South Vietnam, Special Forces teams working with Vietnamese Special Forces are training members of the Civilian Irregular Defense Group, gaining intelligence and advising province and district chiefs and training their regional and popular forces. Serving as a bridge between military operations and the final long-term objective of building a nation free to stand by itself is the Republic of Vietnam's Revolutionary Development Program. Today, Vietnam is engaged in a twofold struggle for existence. On one hand, it is opposing communist forces of the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese regulars. On the other hand, it is carrying out a program to build a viable nation. Each of these tasks is difficult enough to perform separately, but here they both must be accomplished at the same time. All U.S. Army personnel in Vietnam are actively supporting this program, consisting of those coordinated military and civil actions to eliminate Viet Cong control over people who want to choose their own destiny. These actions must restore public security, law, and order, initiate political, social, and economic development, as well as expand government authority and win the willing support of the people. The Revolutionary Development Program is a key part of the nation-building process, and the U.S. Army is providing support for this Republic of Vietnam program in three major ways. First, military operations contribute to the security necessary for the Revolutionary Development Program to begin. As military forces establish the requisite level of security in an area, governmental authority can then be introduced in the form of Revolutionary Development Worker teams, recruited from the area and specially trained. These workers help establish the local governmental administration and initiate simple social and economic projects to help win the support of the people. Revolutionary Development Worker strength is increasing rapidly. The second major way in which the Army supports revolutionary development is to provide advisors to the Republic of Vietnam military and civilian organizations. As Vietnamese regular forces are increasingly committed to the nation-building role, their U.S. Army advisors are likewise engaged. Army province and district advisory teams advise their counterparts, the province and district chiefs, on all aspects of military security, revolutionary development, and governmental activities. The district senior advisors in remote districts of South Vietnam have a particularly challenging and rewarding task. The third major way in which the Army assists in revolutionary development is through social and economic improvement programs. With the increase in U.S. units, there has been a step up in the number and scope of activities performed by U.S. forces. In addition to combat operations, U.S. units engage in a wide variety of civic activities, ranging from simple acts of kindness to the distribution of food and clothing, to relatively ambitious construction projects. U.S. Army civil affairs companies assist in such fields as agriculture, public health, education and welfare, and refugee assistance. U.S. military surgical teams provide medical services up to major surgery. Engineer construction advisory detachments assist in such tasks as improvement of water supply systems, sewer construction, and general rural improvement. A facet of the support being provided for the civilian population is the redistribution of captured items to district officials for release to the local populace. Thousands of pounds of rice and salt were distributed, as well as large quantities of food, clothing, and medical supplies. The use of the flying crane helicopter in Vietnam has opened many possibilities for innovation in support of nation building and on the battlefield. This bridge span can be airlifted and installed in a fraction of the time and with far less effort than would be required using conventional bridge building techniques. Another innovation has been the formation of land clearing platoons, which with their 30 tractors equipped with special tree-cutting blades can clear up to 240 acres of jungle growth a day. These units help deny the enemy jungle concealment and aid economic progress by clearing new land for cultivation and housing. Advances in revolutionary development, while not as dramatic as those made against enemy main units, are nonetheless encouraging. Successes against major enemy tactical units have created an environment in which revolutionary development is now possible on an expanding scale. The program is moving and in the proper direction. U.S. Army Vietnam's strong and capable 1st Logistical Command has grown with the buildup of U.S. forces and supports not only those who wear the Army green, but also other U.S., Vietnamese, and Free World forces and activities. Its customers and consumers in Vietnam total over 1.3 million persons. Development and smooth operation of sea and river ports has been one of the most remarkable logistic success stories of 1967. Near Saigon, upstream from the once badly overcrowded civilian port, the Army completed a 6th port facility in Vietnam, appropriately named Newport. The port complex includes 4 600-foot permanent piers, 2 LST slips, and 1,200 feet of barge pier. To assist in the construction effort, these panels and trusses prefabricated at this Cam Ranh Bay engineer site have permitted units to build their own austere cantonments. Some of the more notable innovations in solving the logistical problems in Vietnam have been in the field of containerization. Here we see a sea-land ship which transports 500 containers, the size of the 35-foot semi-trailers which deliver them to the ship and onto which they are offloaded at the port in Vietnam. It takes only 750 man-hours to discharge 20,000 tons of cargo from a container ship, compared with 10 to 15 times that amount of manpower for conventional ships. The cargo shipped to Vietnam in Connex containers continues to increase. Although designed to protect cargo from loss, damage, and pilferage, they have found countless additional uses in the theater. They are converted into dispensaries, offices, supply rooms, and protected command posts. Meeting the requirement for fast delivery, high-priority repair parts from the United States is the Red Ball Express. Although named for its famed World War II predecessor, the current version utilizes airlift throughout the transportation cycle. Red Ball Express cargo, marked for identification, is shipped to Travis Air Force Base, California, for processing, consolidation, and onward movement. Upon arrival in Saigon, the high-priority cargo is immediately sorted and shipped to its requesters. The nerve center of the 1st Logistical Command is the 14th Inventory Control Center. It has modern electronic data processing equipment for control of more than 200,000 different supply and maintenance items. The Army Medical Service in Vietnam is a complex organization of more than 125 medical units and some 11,000 medical personnel deployed the length and breadth of the Republic to perform the time-honored military medical mission of conserving the fighting strength. With professional help no more than minutes away by air, and when minutes often mean lives, the mortality rate among wounded who get hospital attention is the lowest in history. The versatility of the medical evacuation helicopter has been increased by the development of a special internal personnel hoist, now found in all air ambulance units. In forested areas where it is difficult to land, it is being used with increasing frequency to extract wounded in a matter of minutes when otherwise it would take hours. In conjunction with this hoist, another device is being used. Here being demonstrated is a forest penetrator. It resembles an anchor in appearance and permits the evacuation of a casualty without the necessity of landing the helicopter. Inevitably, war narrows down to its basic factor, the individual soldier. While his army backs him with all the support that science can muster, it can never totally eliminate the requirement for him to close with the enemy, to move forward if necessary, one slow foot at a time. This dirty, rugged, time-consuming, and deadly job has been his for as long as warfare has existed. The American soldier. He is fighting a fanatical enemy in an environment which is advantageous to that enemy. And yet it is true that his morale is extremely high. His morale is founded on confidence in his officers and NCOs, in his own ability, and in that of his comrades. It is reinforced by the knowledge that he is the best equipped, best supported soldier in the world. He knows that no matter where he fights in Vietnam, he is never more than airborne minutes away from modern medical facilities. The 12-month tour sets a tolerable limit to the demands that are made upon him. And rest and recuperation facilities such as these at Fort DeRussy, Hawaii, help him to rebuild his energies. Army chaplains are available to satisfy his spiritual needs wherever he may be. Of extreme importance to his peace of mind is the knowledge that the Army takes care of its own. Army community service centers are always ready to provide his dependents with assistance. Such demonstrations of the Army's concern for his welfare all help to maintain high morale. But its fundamental source stems from the fact that he is a man who believes in his country and what it stands for. And he is eyewitness to the fact that his service in Vietnam has purpose and, however slowly, is seeing results. In his willingness to risk his life to meet the challenge to his country and to help defend a nation on the other side of the world, the United States Army soldier is demonstrating courage, tenacity, and integrity. Out of this Vietnam crucible, a sharper sword has emerged. The Army soldiers are better trained, as proven by their superb performance in combat. They appreciate the value of nation building and helping people. The Army has developed better ways to do its job and better equipment to do it with, not only in Vietnam, but worldwide.
In the northwest corner of South Vietnam, nestled among 4,000-foot-high mountains, steep ravines, and thick jungle foliage, rests the small valley of Khe Sanh. At this time in history, it is calm and peaceful. But from January 21st to March 31st, 1968, it was the scene of one of the most bitterly fought and highly publicized battles of the Vietnam War. For 70 days and nights, a determined group of 6,000 Marines and Allied troops held out against a besieging force of 20,000 North Vietnamese. Was Khe Sanh worth it? Why did the U.S. military command feel it necessary to defend this outpost? This is its story.
Many times I'm asked what part I think Quezon will play in the history of our country, and it's almost impossible for me to evaluate it since I was so close to the situation. However, I can tell you a little bit about it, and perhaps the place we should start is with an orientation of its location and some of the features around it. Quezon, as you know, is located 8 to 10 miles from the Sapone River, which is the boundary between Laos and South Vietnam. It's south of the demilitarized zone and has around it certain hill masses which control some of the infiltration routes coming down in this general area. And of course, Route 9, basically the only road in this area, runs from the Laotian border, continues on through and goes almost to the coast of Vietnam. In about April of 1967, the battalion surprised an enemy element on this particular hill mass, and eventually it resulted in the Marines seizing Hill 861, 881 South, and 881 North. After these had been seized, it was determined that a small unit should be placed on Hill 950 in this general area here, so that when August of 1967 rolled around and I took over the base, I found myself with troops on 881 South, 861, and 950.
In the summer of 1967, the Battle of Quezon was still many months away, but units of the U.S. Navy Seabees are already at work on the airstrip that will provide the only link with the outside, while the Marines are busy digging trenches and building bunkers. The weeks that follow are relatively quiet. Marine units continue their patrol operations with very little enemy action. In December of 1967, intelligence sources indicate the start of an enemy buildup. 2 North Vietnamese divisions are assembling in the deep areas around the base. The Communists could be preparing for a major assault. If the base is to be defended, it will have to be reinforced. The decision is made by General William C. Westmoreland, top commander of U.S. forces in Vietnam. The Marines will stay and fight. He is supported by the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Quezon was an important outpost. If the enemy had taken this outpost, I think the province of Quang Tri and the DMZ area would have been in jeopardy. The enemy had planned to take it as part of his Tet Offensive. At the same time, he had planned to overrun Quang Tri City, seize and hold Hue, and to roll up our defenses south of the demilitarized zone. If he could have seized that plateau, he could have run trucks with ammunition, logistics, and even conventional artillery into the Quezon Plateau, and certain of our installations further to the east could have been made untenable. Now, we saw the enemy building up his forces in order to siege and eventually overrun Quezon as he did Dien Bien Phu in 1954. The weather was very poor. In October, we had only 1 battalion there. In November, we increased it to 2 battalions. December, we kept 2 battalions there, but in January, we reinforced it with 2 more battalions, all Marines. We then put a Ranger battalion in there. I wanted to put into Quezon enough troops that I thought could hold it against ground attack. But I didn't want to put more troops in there than we could supply by air.
Quezon and Dien Bien Phu. The comparison was natural. In August of 1954, French paratroops had moved into the Viet Minh stronghold, then a part of French Indochina, located in North Vietnam. Bringing in heavy artillery, tanks, and equipment, they prepared for the Communists' attack led by the North Vietnamese general, Vo Nguyen Giap. But the French found themselves outmanned and outfought. They were surrounded, cut off from their source of supplies and reinforcements by a superior artillery, crippled by a lack of air power, and crushed relentlessly in Giap's powerful nutcracker. The end was inevitable. The French were overrun. forced to capitulate. The defeat brought an end to the Indochina War. 2 months later, the armistice agreement was signed at Geneva. Vietnam was partitioned, Laos and Cambodia neutralized. French influence in Southeast Asia collapsed. The Russian communists were quick to congratulate the victors, Ho Chi Minh and his brilliant General Giap. Now, 15 years later, the same General Giap is determined to repeat his victory at Khe Sanh. By January 1968, the stage was set. Inside the 1 mile by 1/2 mile perimeter of the Marine garrison were 6,000 U.S. Marines, a battalion of South Vietnamese Rangers, and a handful of Air Force and CB support troops. Burrowed in bunkers and hidden under the triple canopied foliage that covered the surrounding slopes was the largest and best equipped force ever mustered by the enemy, 20,000 North Vietnamese Army troops.
On the 19th of January, there was a recon patrol which had gone out in this general area north of Hill 881 North and ran into considerable trouble, and it really developed into quite a tense situation, but eventually we were able to get them out and brought them back to Hill 881 South. So the next day it was decided that we should go out and clean out this enemy force which had evidently come in the 881 North area. So we sent one of the companies from 881 South towards 81 North, and they banged head-on into what evidently was a NVA battalion. This was a day-long fight, and by nightfall they were still in contact in heavy action, and with nightfall coming on we withdrew them back to Hill 881 South. We had plans to go out the next day, but then on the morning of the 21st, about 0500 in the morning, the base received heavy mortar, rocket, and artillery fire. Almost simultaneously, Hill 861 came under attack from about a battalion-sized NVA force, and that no sooner got started than down here in Khe Sanh Village, CAC unit came under attack by about a battalion. So we had 3 things going at once, and naturally my concern was with all of these forces which are around me. As you can well imagine, I began to become concerned that they might start closing the base. However, it didn't take very long to really upset me when, in a few minutes later, after this whole thing is boiling to a pot, that the ammo dump went completely up and there was rounds flying all over the place.
The siege is on. The North Vietnamese launch a massive artillery attack. The Americans counter with record airstrikes and artillery, and the B-52s start their aerial bombardment. U.S. commanders predict a major North Vietnamese offensive just before the Lunar New Year on January 30th, or just after it. This could develop into the biggest confrontation of the war. The weather is on the side of the North Vietnamese. Communist gunners time their attacks to take advantage of the mist closing in on the airfield that hampers American planes from striking back. January 29th. American intelligence reports presence of a 4th North Vietnam Regular Division in the Khe Sanh area, bringing the total estimated enemy strength in the area to approximately 40,000 regular troops. Half of these appear poised for the attack on the garrison. General Westmoreland positions his reserves of about 15,000 Army troops plus a 5,000-man Marine regiment at Phu Bai, about 60 miles southwest of Khe Sanh.
In early February, the enemy again tried to take the 861 complex. However, this time they made an effort on its twin sister 861A. The attack on that hill was repelled through the use of not only the supporting arms, artillery, air, but also, as with every other attack on the perimeter, by the organic infantry weapons, the 81mm mortars, 3.5 rockets, M79, machine guns, and mines, and every other weapon available to an infantry battalion.
February 10th. The North Vietnamese Communist Party newspaper boasts that the U.S. faces a defeat as disastrous as that suffered by the French at Dien Bien Phu. There is growing concern over the fate of the Marine garrison, as the U.S. press also revives the specter of Dien Bien Phu. At stake now is more than a key military stronghold. The Communists are out to inflict heavy casualties on the American troops with a major victory, so that the U.S. would enter negotiations on terms favorable to Hanoi.
The Battle of Quai Son. This was a very traumatic experience for the American people, but I never had any real concern about Quai Son. I had a few restless nights, but I had full confidence that we were going to win the Battle of Quai Son because we had the means.
The Americans have protection from big 175mm guns at Camp Carroll, about 17 miles to the east, and at the rock pile about 12 miles to the northeast. Inside the garrison, the troops have a handful of tanks, anti-tank weapons, 4.2-inch mortars, and about 20 artillery pieces, including 105 and 155mm howitzers. But their secret weapon is their air power. Fighter bombers of the Navy, Marines, and Air Force, capable of mounting 600 flights a day, plus the terrifying power of B-52 bombers that can drop 500 and 750-pound bombs on 50 bomber runs a day. And then there are the supply planes, giant C-130s and 123s that build a lifeline through the shrapnel-infested skies to keep the Marines supplied with food, ammunition, medical supplies, building materials, and mail from home.
And according to our calculations, we could supply Quai Son by parachute drop, and we had prepared ourselves for this contingency some 18 months before. During the ensuing period, I had required the commanders to rely from time to time on aerial resupply to practice the system and get the pilots accustomed to dropping these supplies in all weather conditions. So when the time arrived, we were able to supply that garrison of some 5,000 people. We had built up an airfield that would take C-130s. And we put radar on the airfield, or GCA actually, so that we could bring in C-130s and 123s in all weather. And when it got too hot for them to land, having lost a couple of C-130s, then we started bringing them in for low-level extraction, where the supplies would be dropped or let to the ground from the air platform by parachute. The result, of course, was that we supplied them.
February 13th. Marine casualties mount when a U.S. Marine platoon is ambushed by the Viet Cong 800 yards outside the barbed wire. Throughout the month of February, the North Vietnamese artillery continues to pound the garrison. Some of their guns are apparently dug into the caves across the Laos border 10 miles away, believed to include 130mm and 152mm guns and rockets. The Americans counter with airstrikes and B-52 bombings, pinpointing the advancing communists only yards from the base perimeter.
The Marines were told to button up. I told them to confine their patrols to close-in patrols for their own security, because I did not want them venturing too far afield where men would get killed and wounded or lost, so that we could not afford to put our firepower in the area where we knew they were located. And we started pouring it on. And that's the thought that came to mind when I call this Operation Niagara. And this is exactly what happened. The bombs fell all the month of February and all the month of March.
Arclight is the code name for these terrifying bombers. Coming in at 20,000 feet and literally destroying the target area with their 500 and 750-pound bombs. The North Vietnamese troops are forced to dig in, keep their heads down and concentrate on avoiding being scorched by napalm or pulverized by the bombs. When bad weather comes, and at night, they bomb by radar, pinpointing their targets by means of a ground-controlled system called Sky Spot. February 22nd. Troop movements have indicated that the enemy is massing for the long-awaited attack. The defenders waited out, sandbagged bunkers and trenches, their position surrounded by tangled coils of barbed wire studded with explosive charges and claymore mines. The incoming artillery fire, rockets, and mortars of the enemy continue to pound the garrison. In Saigon and Honolulu, watch teams manning the war rooms wait throughout the weekend of March 3rd, expecting word that the anticipated communists' assault has been launched. From the communists' viewpoint, the weather conditions are ideal, and American intelligence reports indicate that the all-out attack should come early Monday morning. But it does not develop. Apparently, the communists are unable to mass their troops for the attack because of the airstrikes and heavy bombardment. Also, the Marines still control the high ground guarding the approaches to Khe Sanh. Hills 881, 861, 950, and 558. So far, the enemy has been unable to take any of them. March 13th. This is the 14th anniversary of General Giap's attack on Dien Bien Phu, and time is running out for the communists. The Marines spend a relatively quiet day, waiting and watching.
As I reflect back on it, I can remember that the news stories coming out were talking about the agony of Khe Sanh and so forth and so on. I'm reminded of the story of the, and I know this to be true because I was standing there, Italian newspaper man came in and went around the base for a little while, met a lot of people and talked to people, and then he come back over and he said, you know, he says, everybody you talk about the agony at Khe Sanh. He says, I see no agony. He says, you got the apple, you got the orange. He says, but on the other hand, I don't see any ecstasy. And I think this is probably the way that all the men felt, that there was certainly no joy to it, but that the agony, there was none. The morale was good and outstanding, and everybody had a job to do and did it.
Because of the resupply, we never ran out of sea rations. You could take a walk through the trench lines and the bunkers and find an array of menus being prepared. Some of them were quite elaborate. We'll just call them casseroles. Of course, these casseroles had various names. Several in particular that I remember. We'll call Khe Sanh Special. I think that was beef and chicken cooked, stewed together. Another one was called a Hippie's Delight. That was just about everything thrown in the pot together. And there were another one called Mulligan Stew. That was my specialty. I only had 3 meats in this type of stew. We beefed it up with hot sauce and meat sauce, and it was quite tasty.
March 26th, the enemy closes in, digging tunnels and working their trenches close to the base perimeter. 5 times they have probed the garrison's defenses, hitting the perimeter in battalion strength. But each time they're thrown back. The enemy is still unable to mass for the all-out attack. March 27th, the enemy has withdrawn 1 of his 2 divisions, and substantial elements have been withdrawn from a 2nd North Vietnamese unit. Now the heavy U.S. bombing and airstrikes only heighten the desire of the remaining North Vietnamese troops to get out as the monsoon lifts and the weather clears. The Marines move out of their trenches and bunkers to seek and engage the enemy on the ground.
And on the 1st of April, the weather broke, and we were able to exercise our contingency plans by moving the 1st Cavalry Division, reinforced by a regiment of Marines, up Highway 9 to make a ground link-up, and the Marine engineers opened Highway 9, and we've been rolling trucks over it ever since.
These are the relief troops of Operation Pegasus, 30,000 men strong, a joint force composed of the 1st Air Cavalry Division of the U.S. Army and South Vietnamese troops. Sweeping down from the narrow highway from the north, they see little of the 2 North Vietnamese divisions that had surrounded the base. The enemy has left, silently pulled out and given up the battle, leaving in his wake a scarred and churned up landscape, blown up and destroyed bridges that must be rebuilt before the convoy can proceed, and hidden mines that must be found and exploded. Fleets of helicopters lift men and artillery into the hills surrounding the base. And on April 7th, lead elements of the relief troops walk into the base at Khe Sanh. The long siege is over.
It is my conservative estimate that 15,000 men were knocked out of action during that period of time. The result was that we broke his back, and he has not regained his strength since. We captured documents on the battlefield that attest to this. And we've learned from these documents that we not only killed a lot of the enemy and destroyed great quantities of his supplies, but we also made it so hot in that area that he was having great difficulty with desertions. Up to 20 to 25% of companies, according to these documents, deserted and just took off. And I think this is the first time in history where a siege of that magnitude has ever been broken by air power, but it was. And once it was broken by air power, and this was our strategy, it was exploited by a ground operation. But his back had been virtually broken when the ground troops arrived.
The aerial bombardment on the North Vietnamese at Khe Sanh was the most intense in the history of warfare. In all, from January 19th until March 31st, more than 103,000 tons of bombs were dropped on the besieging force. Navy, Air Force, and Marine pilots flew more than 24,000 sorties, including 2,500 by B-52s. In addition, the enemy was pounded by more than 100,000 rounds of artillery and mortar fire. After Marine units moved out of Khe Sanh into the surrounding terrain, they discovered hundreds of North Vietnamese bodies in shallow graves. Total enemy casualties for the period were estimated at more than 15,000. Marine losses were 204 killed and 1,622 wounded and evacuated. On May 23rd at the Air Force Base in Utapao, Thailand, General Westmoreland paid tribute to the B-52 crews who had supported the aerial bombardment throughout the siege.
You crews that man the B-52, which have been part of the overall team, a professional team, but your contribution has been of the utmost importance, and we would not be in the posture today without what you have contributed.
On that same day, at the White House in Washington, D.C., the 26th Marine Regiment and its reinforcing units were cited by the President for their gallant fighting and countless acts of individual heroism in defending Khe Sanh. Colonel David E. Lowndes, the commanding officer of the Marine post, received the Navy Cross. And Sergeant Major A.W. Smith, senior enlisted Marine at the base, was awarded the Bronze Star.
Some have asked what the gallantry of these Marines and airmen accomplished. Why did we choose to pay the price to defend those dreary hills? The fortress at Khe Sanh straddled critical supply and infiltration routes that the North Vietnamese were using. Route 9, which it commanded, was to be a major avenue for the enemy into populated areas and into the cities of South Vietnam. by pinning down and by decimating 2 North Vietnamese divisions. The few thousand Marines and their gallant South Vietnamese allies prevented those divisions from entering other major battles, such as those for Hue and Quang Tri. I believe that our initiative toward talks with North Vietnam was greatly strengthened by what these men did at Khe Sanh, for they vividly demonstrated to the enemy the utter futility of his attempts to win a military victory in the South. Brave men such as the 26th Marines will carry on the fight for freedom in Vietnam, and soon, God willing, they will come home. We would like nothing more than to see that day, but until they do, we shall express at moments such as these, on behalf of all our American people, our great gratitude for the protection they have given us and our great appreciation for their selfless bravery.
At Khe Sanh today, the airstrip is deserted and the trenches and bunkers have long since been abandoned. The defenders have gone as the changing nature of a changing war imposes new requirements on military strategy. The battle that was fought here will now take its place in history. Perhaps someday historians will call it the most important single battle of the Vietnam War. Only time can determine that.
The history of the 1st Division, the Big Red One, begins as far back as the Revolutionary War, when its Battery D of the 5th Field Artillery served under Captain Alexander Hamilton. This battery has the longest record of continuous service of any unit in the United States Army. Its history runs parallel to the history of America. The Fighting First was organized as a division in World War I, when it scored the first American victory of the war at Cantigny. In the great battles of Soissons, Saint-Michel, and the Meuse-Argonne, it helped smash the German army and end the war. During World War II, the 1st Division, true to its name, was in the first waves of the invasions of North Africa, Sicily, and Normandy. It smashed across France and Belgium in bloody fighting, was the first to enter Germany, and helped stop the Nazis in the Battle of the Bulge, in the drive to the final victory in Europe. 20 years later, when communist aggression in South Vietnam threatened the peace of Southeast Asia, the first full U.S. Army division sent to meet the challenge was the Big Red One. The Vietnam engagement was to be the longest and in some ways the most arduous of the wars fought by the 1st Division. But as always, the division lived up to its great heritage of valor and success in battle. The arrival of the first Big Red One troops in Vietnam in July 1965 was very quiet and efficient. They were moved swiftly off the beach at Cam Ranh Bay and sent to various base camps in the Saigon area. The first task was housekeeping and setting up defense perimeters. Then patrols, not only to clear the area around the base camps, but also to harden the men to the difficult climate and terrain. In all the varied combat history of the 1st Division, it had never fought in the soggy, humid climate of the tropics. or in the tall grass or thickets of the jungle, or in its rivers and swamps. The foot soldiers were inducted into airmobile patrols. There was contact with the enemy, so that they learned something about his guerrilla tactics. But there was no big action until November. By that time, over 14,000 1st Division men were in Vietnam. Their area of operations was to be a vast portion of central South Vietnam, from the Cambodian border to the South China Sea. Division headquarters was set up 20 miles north of Saigon at Ye An, under Major General Jonathan O. Seaman, first of the 5 commanding generals the Big Red One was to have in Vietnam. The first of the dozens of major battles the division would fight in Vietnam took place at the tiny village of Ap Bao Bang, north of Lai Khe on Highway 13. On a sweep along Highway 13, several units of the 1st were hit by a reinforced Viet Cong regiment. 3 enemy frontal assaults were thrown back by intense small arms fire plus automatic weapons. The 4th and heaviest Viet Cong assault was stopped by 105s, firing at close range. As the weakened enemy fell back, the Air Force was called in to pound their escape routes. In its first engagement in jungle warfare, the men of the Big Red One fought like veterans. There were casualties, but the Viet Cong left 198 dead on the battlefield. It was more than just a victory for the tired infantrymen. It was proof they could defeat a hard-fighting enemy on his own terrain. A few days later, on November 20th, another road convoy turned the tables on a would-be Viet Cong ambush near Trung Loi. The convoy immediately set up a defense perimeter and returned fire. When a gunship drove the enemy from cover, heavy ground fire, especially by the mortar platoon, smashed the trap. The victory at Trung Loi was followed early in December by the biggest and most successful battle of the year. This was Ap Nha Ma, northwest of 3rd Brigade headquarters at Lai Khe. A task force was searching the countryside, eliminating Viet Cong bases, blowing up bunkers and underground factories, when they ran head-on into a fortified base camp defended by 4 battalions of the enemy. A violent firefight broke out immediately. A radio call for fire support brought in deadly concentrations of howitzer fire and repeated tactical airstrikes. After 2 hours of fierce fighting, an infantry assault finally routed the enemy. The Big Red One had its losses, but medevac ambulance helicopters saved many lives by flying in to remove the wounded even as the fighting went on. Patrols grew larger and longer as the division increased its pressure on the elusive enemy. Even so, there was time for mercy missions to the South Vietnamese. Civic action, medical supplies, skilled help, and friendliness to villagers and their children. The beginning of 1966 saw an upsurge of activity by the battle-hardened 1st Division, with armor playing an increasing role in campaigns like Operation Crimp and Rolling Stone, and fierce engagements like those at Tan Binh and Lo Khe, where 1st Division soldiers proved at devastating cost to the enemy that they were masters of the jungle ambush. It was at Lo Khe that the division won its first Medal of Honor in Vietnam in the person of 1st Lieutenant Robert J. Hibbs, whose 15-man patrol chopped up 2 Viet Cong companies. Lieutenant Hibbs was killed when he attacked an enemy machine gun to cover the rescue of one of his wounded soldiers. Under a new commanding general, Major General William E. Depew, who took command in March, the Big Red One lashed out at the enemy in ground drives and air assaults by helicopter. The campaigns were continuous as task forces struck hard throughout the spring, summer, and fall of 1966 in the humid jungle, on dusty roads, in the vast swampy delta of the Rung Sat Special Zone below Saigon. Battle followed battle as sudden, swift probes took the Viet Cong by surprise. Search and clear teams swept through his sanctuaries and hiding places. Armored road marches baited the enemy into would-be ambush traps, then turned the tables with devastating effect. Vast quantities of supplies and weapons were captured as dozens of VC base camps were overrun. The toll of enemy dead and wounded rose. Operation Attleboro alone accounted for over 1,000 North Vietnamese and VC killed. Communist plans for taking the offensive were completely disrupted. By the end of 1966, the men of the Big Red One were experts in the revolutionary new tactics of air-mobile operations, which rushed troops to the battlefield with unprecedented speed and mobility. Division cannoneers set new records for the speed, volume, and accuracy of supporting fires. Coordination with aerial support, either by gunships firing rockets or jet fighter bombers, became a highly polished art. Of great benefit were the lessons learned in how to fight the guerrilla and ambush tactics of the enemy. The Battle of the Minh Thanh Road was a striking example. After very careful planning, a powerful armored column from the 1st Brigade was sent on a road reconnaissance in order to lure the 272nd Regiment of the crack Viet Cong 9th Division into battle. As expected, the Viet Cong tried to ambush the column. 3 battalions attacked abreast along the entire 1,200-meter length of the convoy. The heavily armed column, ready and waiting, blazed back with everything it had, and it had plenty. While the army held its blocking positions on the road, helicopter-borne infantry was flown in to attack the Viet Cong flanks. Tremendous artillery fire poured in on the numerically superior enemy. Forward air control personnel called in strike after strike, 96 sorties in all. This sustained rain of fire was too much for the Viet Cong. They broke and ran with heavy losses. The Battle of the Minh Thanh Road was a superb example of the combined use of armor and infantry to destroy an enemy ambush. Armor serving as a fixing force to hold the enemy in battle, while infantry battalions maneuvered to hit his rear and flanks. The continuous campaigning of 1966 had familiarized the 1st Division with most of its vast area of operations, kept its lines of communication open, and disrupted enemy efforts to take the initiative. Now, the division was to strike directly into Viet Cong sanctuaries. The target was the Iron Triangle, the vast jungle area which was the enemy's foremost operational base for attacks on Saigon. In January 1967, Operation Cedar Falls was launched. 5 infantry battalions, plus 2 more from the 173rd Airborne Brigade, were airlifted to blocking positions to encircle the objective. Armor closed in to seal off escape routes. The main attack force struck deep inside the enemy-held jungle, so thick in places the Hueys couldn't land, and the men had to descend by a rope ladder. They pushed through heavy jungle, thickets and vines, waded through streams, searching for the enemy in village hideouts and underground bunkers. There was resistance as the Viet Cong sought to hold up the advance, but they invariably got the worst of it. 30 artillery batteries laid in devastating fires. Engineer bulldozers moved in to level broad stretches of jungle to deny the VC a future hiding place. One of the most significant results of Cedar Falls was the large number of Viet Cong, 576, who surrendered under the Chu Hoi, or Open Arms Program, which encouraged enemy soldiers to join the government side. With the Iron Triangle made untenable for a while, the Big Red One turned its attention to another Viet Cong stronghold, War Zone C. It was suspected that insurgent headquarters was located north of the city of Tay Ninh. Led by a new commanding general, Major General John H. Hay, who assumed command early in February, the division undertook painstaking preparations for Operation Junction City. Junction City was larger than Cedar Falls and lasted much longer, from February through April. Units from all 3 brigades participated. They were reinforced by troops from other U.S. divisions and separate brigades, plus Rangers from ARVN, the Army of the Republic of South Vietnam. Altogether, 30,000 Allied troops went in to clear out War Zone C. Despite this large force, there were many engagements in which units of the 1st Division were outnumbered. Aggressive patrols lured the enemy into attacking. When contact was established, help was called in. Additional troops rushed in by air, moving with stunning speed to reinforce the embattled defenders. Supporting fires from the ground and from the air blasted the attackers. Helicopters again proved their versatility in many ways, as air artillery, as troop carriers deploying large forces at distances and speeds that constantly took the enemy by surprise, as aerial ambulances rushing the wounded from battlefield to hospital, sometimes in minutes, as supply ships delivering vital cargo right into the hands of soldiers on the battlefield, artillery and ammo, so that the Viet Cong, no matter how far away, was never safe from the destructive fire of the big guns. The result of Operation Junction City was the heaviest loss yet sustained by the enemy. Over 1,800 dead, and the veteran 9th Viet Cong Division completely shattered. The Big Red One, hardly pausing, pressed on with more campaigns through the rest of the spring and summer. In Operations Manhattan and Billings, task forces probed into enemy strongholds in the Michelin Trapezoid area and War Zone D. Meanwhile, a different kind of campaign, continuous since its inception in 1966, was operating throughout the entire 1st Division area. This was the Revolutionary Development Program, carried out jointly by Americans and Vietnamese to win the confidence and goodwill of the Vietnamese people, especially in villages suspected of harboring Viet Cong. The procedure was for a task force to move in unexpectedly and seal off the village. Soldiers swiftly established security by checking for mines and booby traps. Psychological warfare specialists with signs and posters explained their mission. The village was thoroughly searched for evidence of Viet Cong activity and suspects taken into custody. Then supplies were brought in and the villagers were fed and clothed. MedCap, medical missions, were a vital part of the pacification program, bringing badly needed treatment for a variety of ailments. While the Big Red One carried out its missions of peace and war, it also conducted an immense training program. Many of its veteran soldiers and battle leaders had gone home through the Army's yearly rotation program. Yet, thanks chiefly to mobile training teams of combat experienced personnel, the 20,000 men of the division were at a peak of professionalism when the 1st began Operation Shenandoah II, one of its fiercest campaigns, and to many veterans, the most outstanding in the division's 5 years in Vietnam. Shenandoah II was a series of violent battles at far-flung points on both sides of Highway 13, from Lai Khe north to the area around Loc Ninh, near the Cambodian border. From September into November, the fighting raged through jungles, across rubber plantations, through wooded areas, tall grass, and streams. It was often toe-to-toe slugging with the enemy. Night fighting was common, as North Vietnamese and Viet Cong troops attempted futile assaults on the American NDP's night defensive positions. The Big Red One had the advantage of highly mobile armored support and heavy firepower always on call, and fought alongside the South Vietnamese Army units. The result was inevitable, a smashing series of victories that destroyed numerous enemy bases and fortifications and left over 1,000 of his troops dead. The rest retreated to their sanctuaries again, leaving Highway 13 secure. Of the 8 major battles that made the Shenandoah campaign so memorable, one of the most remarkable was the battle for the airstrip at the town of Loc Ninh. ARVN and Special Forces soldiers came in by air assault to drive out the Viet Cong, who held a small sector of the town. They routed the enemy from bunkers and houses in fierce attacks. The insurgents counterattacked time and again, but were thrown back each time. The fighting raged for days as both sides brought in more forces. The high point, however, was at the airstrip, where 1st Division artillery had set up a fire base. The Viet Cong attacked across the airstrip in 3 waves, but were stopped by howitzers, firing at point-blank range. There were many heroes in Operation Shenandoah II. It was a fitting tribute that it was the President of the United States who presented the awards for valor in battle. It was a well-earned respite for the Big Red One when Bob Hope and his USO troop arrived to entertain the division at Christmas. The Viet Cong Tet Offensive that opened 1968 did not take the Big Red One by surprise, since some kind of all-out enemy drive was expected. When the attack struck Saigon and the U.S. Embassy was assaulted, troops were rushed to the city. There was hard fighting. South Vietnamese soldiers did their share. There were casualties and destruction, but the inevitable result was annihilation of the insurgent force. In March, the division resumed its strong offensive tempo under a new leader, Major General Keith L. Ware, famous as a Congressional Medal of Honor winner in World War II. General Ware launched two massive campaigns in areas to the north of Saigon and northwest in the Iron Triangle. The first was Operation Withdrawal, translated as Resolve to Win. The second was Operation Tong Tong, which meant certain victory. The objective of these aggressive campaigns was to smash the enemy's war potential on a vast scale, kill his troops, destroy his base camps and supply dumps, interdict his supply trails and his routes for infiltration, and retreat. The result was a stunning success. Vast quantities of arms and materiel were found in weapons caches or were seized from the enemy, who lost over 2,000 killed. General Ware also initiated Operation Giant Swamp, in which a new tactical concept was applied to the Rome plow, a standard tractor with a special cutting edge for jungle clearing. Hitherto, the Rome plow had been used with great effectiveness to clear large jungle areas used as enemy sanctuaries. In Giant Swath, land-clearing teams used the plow to slice a network of wide trails through 11,000 acres of jungle. Instead of trying to clear the whole vast area, they divided it into many small subdivisions. The Viet Cong camps, hidden in the jungle, were now highly vulnerable to reconnaissance in force operations and to air assault. Another notable move made by General Ware was to step up night ambush patrols so that almost every unit in the division was engaged. This tactic had a devastating effect on the enemy, who had always considered themselves masters of infiltration and attack under cover of darkness. On September 13th, however, the division suffered a heavy blow. General Ware was flying over Loc Ninh, observing a successful counterattack against insurgent efforts to overrun the town for the fourth time. The general's command helicopter was shot down by ground fire. All aboard were killed. He was the fourth American general to be killed in Vietnam. The assistant division commander, Major General Orwin C. Talbot, immediately assumed command of the first, and the drive continued. There was frequent contact with the enemy as strong forces pushed north, carrying out Phase 2 of Operation Certain Victory. Viet Cong resistance was strong, and there was hard fighting as 1st Divisioners conducted several spoiling actions, destroying enemy camps and heavily built bunkers with intense fires supported by artillery. Among the highlights of the drive were several engagements with troops of the 1st North Vietnamese Army Division. These took place immediately across the border from Cambodia's Fishhook area. The Big Red One had established several fire support patrol bases in the area. They were placed astride a main infiltration route used by the North Vietnamese invaders. NVA troops hurled themselves fiercely at the fire bases in repeated night attacks and met devastating fires. They were brave, but the results were always the same. Failure. Many dead. A sidelight of all Big Red One campaigns was the continuing effort to help the South Vietnamese in nation building, working with these ARVN allies in the Revolutionary Development Program. Each village was first made secure by searching it thoroughly for traces of Viet Cong. Leaflets were used extensively to encourage defections to the government side. Civic action programs were put into operation to help the villagers, feeding them, attending to their medical and dental needs. Animals as well as humans were carefully ministered to with the hope that the South Vietnamese could help themselves to attain economic self-sufficiency and to strengthen grassroots government. In 1969, the division continued its tremendous sweeps to keep the enemy off balance. Sometimes it struck from the skies in air-mobile assaults, sometimes on the ground in a fluid shift of tactics. Armor played a powerful supporting role in these drives to cripple the communist winter-spring offensive. Powerful reconnaissance in force operations struck again and again into the Iron Triangle, the Michelin Trapezoid, War Zone C, and War Zone D. Battles by night alternated with fighting by day as Viet Cong and North Vietnamese soldiers resisted desperately. Highly trained scout dogs sniffed out the enemy while spotter planes sought him from the air. Enemy dead littered the battlefields. Captured weapons, like this communist-made AK-47 rifle, were plentiful. It wasn't easy. The terrain was often rugged, and so was the fighting. There were casualties, but medevac was always there to take out the wounded. Sometimes the enemy attacked recklessly, and sometimes he holed up. Then he had to be blown out, or foot soldiers had to go in after them. These volunteers were known as tunnel rats, and no fighting men were more admired for their courage and nerve. Sometimes enemy contact was light, and there was more monotony than action. It was a welcome relief between patrols and sweeps to see the pretty face of a USO entertainer, even if she did bring along a boyfriend. For some Big Red One soldiers, there was a complete change of pace. They became amphibious. In June of '69, the division began to use small fiberglass boats to patrol the river approaches to Saigon. Working in conjunction with Navy patrol craft and shore-based infantry patrols, these ski boats drastically cut down Viet Cong infiltration by water. Elsewhere, the great fighting machine of the 1st Division continued its relentless pursuit of the enemy under its 5th and last commanding general in Vietnam. He was Major General A.E. Malloy. Deploying its vast power with professional precision. Going into battle with the high morale traditional with the Big Red One. Its fighting men struck smashing blows against Viet Cong forces concentrating north of Saigon for an autumn offensive. For the defeated enemy, it was one more bitter lesson in the futility of challenging the 1st Division's enormous battle power and its irresistible will to win. The war in Vietnam was winding down for the Big Red One. Early in 1970, it made its last sweep. Orders had come in to stand down, to prepare for redeployment. Men and vehicles were withdrawn from the field. Much of its equipment and facilities were turned over to ARVN forces. The U.S. Army's program of Vietnamization, under which the South Vietnamese Army increasingly shouldered the burden of combat operations, was proving a success. Large contingents of American troops had already gone home. Now, it was the turn of the Big Red One. Early in April, the division left the last of its bases and returned to Fort Riley, Kansas, almost 5 years after it had gone to Vietnam. April 15th, 1970 was another milestone in the long, proud history of the 1st Division. In a colorful, heart-stirring ceremony, watched by many thousands, families, relatives, friends, and dignitaries, including the Secretary of Defense, Melvin R. Laird. The 1st Infantry Division was renamed the 1st Infantry Division, mechanized. It had a new commanding general, Major General Robert R. Linville, and it had new troops. Its ranks were filled with the men from another famous fighting outfit, the 24th Infantry Division, which was deactivated. Under its new designation of mechanized, the 1st Division was augmented with additional armor, reflecting the vast increase in firepower and mobility of the modern U.S. Army Infantry Division. The 1st had a new mission, too, to support our commitment to NATO in defense of the free world. New faces, new strength, a new mission, but all of it steeped in a time-honored, hallowed tradition of service to country. And now, after almost 2 centuries of valorous battle deeds, the 1st Division looks ahead, confident that it will carry out its future tasks in the spirit of its motto: no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great. Duty first.